Morning, morning. Morning, Nathaniel, Katana, Jeremiah. Nick. All right, I put a question up there. We're going to take, we're going to spend, normally at the beginning and end of every year, we spend a little time talking about the scientific method. You know, we do things during the course of the year, but if you remember in the beginning and the end of the year, we spend a lot of time reinforcing the steps. Did you say hi to Harold, by the way? What's your one question? Go ahead and ask. That's one of what these sessions are for. Yeah, number one is ask a question. That scientific experiment is to ask a question. I thought you were asking a question. Good. Yeah, that's very good. Good answer, and that is correct. You're asking a question, and so you're trying to solve a problem. For example, I got into what I thought is poison ivy. I've gotten into poison ivy a lot in my life, over the course of my life. Ever since I was a little kid, we spent every waking hour in the summertime in the woods, in the fields. We were never in the house, out in the yard somewhere, and I always have poison ivy. And so you can't really see it too well there, but I developed a rash on my arm, and I thought it was poison ivy. Right now, and so this is a real world example of how we use this. Hey, Tristan, and we do things like, is this really poison? So I'm asking this question, is this really poison ivy that I have because it's acting differently than any other time? I've had it for almost 3 weeks. It keeps itching. It keeps spreading. The stuff that I got 3 weeks ago is still itching. That's not normal for me. And so I'm actually doing this with myself, is trying to think, is it really poison ivy that I'm doing? So the second thing is not make a hypothesis. You're jumping ahead a little bit. There was I love that. Yeah, I'm really, really allergic to cats, so there would never be a cat in my house. Hey, Kashan, glad to have you on, buddy. I was emailing your mom, and so we're talking about scientific method for those of you guys that just got on. And so in my personal life right now, I'm asking a question: is this poison ivy? Is it something else I got into? Is it a different type of rash altogether? And so the second thing that you do is this, and I'm going to type it in here: background research. Okay. And so what have I been doing? I've spent time online, right? Because there's experts. There's experts out there. I've been spending time online trying to figure out how, 'cause what it is. And so I've been looking at pictures of different types of infections and trying to figure out, I'm sorry, I'm trying to deal with having a family here, needing something from my dog. I've got the dog's leash here. All right, so I don't see Mrs. Yingling. So anyways, the second thing is doing background research. And so I've been looking at different rashes. Excuse me for a second. I've been looking at different rashes, trying to figure out, hey, honey, what exactly it is that I have. And is it poison ivy? Is it something that I've never been allergic to before? That's the background research. I've been on the computer. Now we get to what Nathaniel was talking about, which is coming up with a hypothesis. I can get this thing to type. Coming up with a hypothesis. That's the third thing. So the hypothesis might be, yeah, it is poison ivy, and I'm just reinfecting myself, or no, it's not poison ivy, and so it could be any of those things. Guys, a lot of miscellaneous talk needs to slow down there a little bit. I know some of you haven't seen each other, but let's focus. And I'm glad to have you guys on board. All right. So we got number one is asking that question. Number two is doing the background search. Number three is that hypothesis. Okay. Once we've come up with a hypothesis, then we go through that process of making, how are we going to do the experiment? We make up our set of instructions, and then we actually do the experiment. Okay. So number four is the experiment. And, you need to make up a supplies list. What do I need to actually do it? Do I need water? Do I need beakers? How many beakers do I need? What other things might I actually need to do the experiment? Do I need a graduated cylinder? And so you make your list of supplies up. And do your experiment. Okay. What's important when you're doing an experiment, or one of the most important things is this. And I'm going to write this down. Yeah, that's Hunter. Collecting data is really, really important. You could I've seen students do the best experiment. They come up with a great idea. They've got great procedures. They start doing their experiment, and they're so amazed by what they're doing that they forget to record their data. You should always wash your hands. Typically, you're going to be wearing gloves if you're doing an experiment, right? But as you're doing your experiment, you need to be collecting your data. Okay? And so the last part about that is sharing your results. All right? Okay? So share, Y-O-U, share your results. It's funny, Mr. Vosnight. The 8th grade class, we finally got a lot of people on there, and no one's afraid. Everyone's afraid to say anything, right? And so this is social hour for these guys, which, I'm happy that they can communicate with each other, but, that's what you got all those other apps for. Anyways, the last thing is, that's right, Tristan, you share your results, right? So going back through, we have ask a question, do background research, come up with a hypothesis, test your hypothesis, which is your experiment, and then share your results, okay? So there's 5 different steps that we need to go through. Why am I going through that today? Because one of the things that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to create a project where you're doing an experiment at home, okay? And hopefully the idea behind this is that it's something simple, something that you haven't done before, but something simple that you can do with household items. I will be posting a list. I'm sitting here itching today, right? I'll be posting a list of possibilities of things that you can do. A lot of you guys, here's the thing, don't do something that you've done before, because it's not going to be fun if you're redoing something that you've done. Make it so it's something that you can actually learn, okay, while you're doing it. One of the students in this class tried a new recipe for making, Daniel, what was that? What's that stuff you called that you were making? The goop. And they used a different formula, and he said it come out pretty good. And I was like, oh, I need to try that. And so he's actually, that wasn't even part of a grade, maybe part boredom. He decided he was going to try to do an experiment using stuff that they had in the cabinet at home. And this is the kind of thing I expect you to do. This is something that we would be doing at school right now. Can't do it. I'm watching a little birdie out the window. Can't do it, but you're going to have to. Yeah, it was it was somewhere between slime and Play-Doh. I remember that. And so he used a formula that I hadn't seen before, but it kind of makes sense. And so part of what this is being an explorer, scientific explorer. This is going to be part of your grade, and I'm putting this out there now because this is going to run alongside of us doing other things, like we've been talking about plants, okay? And so there will be multiple assignments up on Google Classroom, one for your experiment, which could potentially be a longer term thing, and one for your plant stuff. And so, yeah, you're right. I like some of the comments. Sometimes when you do an experiment, we talk about accuracy, right? And whether the results we're getting is just by chance or if it's accurate. If we do something once, do we know we have the right answer? If we did it 1,000 times and we get the same result every time, then we probably have a little bit more confidence in the results that we've gotten that time. So that's a good point, Tristan. We want to make sure that we're getting the right results. Yeah, and so if you don't get the results that you want, you go back through that cycle, right? And you change your hypothesis and maybe change a variable. For example, I've been using different medicines to try to get the itching to stop and try to find which one works best. Mr. Fosnight, he makes a barbecue sauce. I bet you it took him a long time to get that sauce just the way he wanted it. It was trial and error, and that's what experiments are in the modern world, have been by mistake, by trial and error, trial and error. And I talk about my friend that was a chemist that had four patents in the U.S. Patent Office, and he said, funny, it was really funny. He said, really funny, Tom, that all of them were accidents. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we were trying to solve one problem, and when we did the experiment, when we started looking at results, we just realized we discovered something new, and it wasn't what we expected, and it happened 4 times in one person's lifetime. That's pretty amazing. So that they've discovered 4 things all by accident. So part of doing experiments is really looking at your data and analyzing your data and know exactly what it is that you're making, and knowing what your results are supposed to be, and looking at the results that you do get and say, did it come out the way I expected? Did I find something new? What exactly is going on? What do I need to go back and change? Does anybody know the definition of a variable? At least not in math, but in science. A variable, V-A-R-I-A-B-L-E. We've talked about variables. Okay, throw it out there. Come on, New York, throw it out there. All right, so if you know what a variable is in math, it's something that we replace. For example, 2x plus 4 equals, okay? That's what that variable is in math. In science, it's that one thing that we can change in an experiment. We don't want to change more than one thing at once, right? Let's say we are doing an experiment. Let's say we're doing an experiment and we don't get the results that we want. So we go back and we change 2 things, and we do get the results that we want. So a variable in science is what we have changed. But if we have changed 2 things, which one of those resulted in the change that we were looking for? Was it one of them? Was it the first thing? Was it the second thing? Or was it, in fact, both of those things? So when you're doing an experiment, it's important to only change one thing at a time. That is called the variable. We're experimenting with making the best pancakes in the world. What would be something that we might change? We might change how much butter we put in it. We might change how many eggs we use in the mix. We might change the type of flour that we use. You guys do know there's different types of flour. We might change how much syrup we put on it. And so there's all kinds of variables. We can only do one at a time. So that's right. You change one thing at a time in an experiment if you don't get the results that you want, to try to get where you need to be. So anybody have any question about science experiments? I will be posting a couple things this week on that on Google. Some of you, most of the people that are on right now have gotten their work done. Some of you haven't. Understand that I'm here to help you get through some of that, and we'll get through it. But there will be more coming. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed by that. Does anybody? Yeah, I know. Does anybody have any questions on the assignment that you've been working on with the online lab. Because I'm not going to do any of that. I wasn't planning on doing any of that today because, I've done it twice already. Okay, do you know what your question is? And remember, if you have questions on any of it, you can always email me or message me in the Google Classroom. If I'm spelling this right. So there's my. Don't worry about due dates, okay? If there's a couple people that are just getting online in the Google Classroom, so there's assignments that say overdue or whatever, don't let that freak you out. Just do it. Just work on it. I am do not. That sentence doesn't really make sense. I am do not. If you get on and you're having trouble getting on, some of you have told me that. I've looked at a couple others. There's some other out there. There's a problem with licenses of being allowed to do it, and I'm not sure if you won't have the same problem if you don't have a computer. I do know some of you are getting screens. The online lab is in Google Docs. There's a link in the Google Docs or in the Google Classroom, and the data you just type it in on the Google Doc that I gave you. But the online lab is pretty cool. Yeah, Nick, you sent me your screen, and I don't quite understand the screen that you sent me. It looks pretty bland. I know when I go to it, I have a blank screen with a little box that says enable Adobe Flash Player. And that's what's not allowing it to work if you don't have Adobe Flash Player. Try to load that onto your device if you can, and hopefully that'll help. I need to get off of here in a minute. Yep. I've seen some people's stuff. What wasn't on there, Nick? I've seen some people's stuff that I've looked at. Some people did a really good job, and they're like caught up, and they're not even on today because they're caught up. You will, like I said, you'll be getting some other assignments on. Don't freak out. Don't feel overwhelmed if you're just getting on, because what I'm assigning you guys is a lot less than what we normally would do in class. Remember, we're in class, 5 days a week, and a lot of class time, a lot of assignments. Here we're doing a couple assignments a week, and that's it. So hope you guys are doing well. I do miss you guys. And I think I'm going to let you guys go. All right. Oh, question of the day. Throwback Thursday. What movie is this t-shirt from? The flux capacitor. You guys stay safe. My foot is a lot better. I was telling Mr. Fosnight that I'm able to slowly walk up and down some stairs now. Thank you for thinking about that and asking. And I'm getting around without a cane. It does hurt after a while, but I'm getting around pretty good comparatively. Thank you for thinking about that. Hope you guys are doing well. Stay safe. Hope you're eating well. And have a good weekend. I will be on. Still swollen a little bit. After a while, it swells up. I will be online every day, checking my email, checking. Thank you, Tristan. You got the right answer. I don't know what's happening with social studies. Thank you for saying bye to Harold. And it's good to have you guys online. And I'm out.